Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. All right, we are continuing our study of Daniel chapter 9, 24 and following. We are embarking here on a study of the dispensational gap doctrine of Daniel chapter 9. That view, simply stated, is this. Daniel 9 allotted 490 years for the establishment of the kingdom of God. Jesus came at the 483rd year. He was anointed at his baptism. He offered the kingdom to Israel. Israel rejected it. And as a result of Israel's rejection of the kingdom offer, God withdrew the kingdom offer. He postponed the prophetic countdown. The prophetic clock stopped ticking. Now, this is the standard dispensational view. It was the view of Walvoord, LaHaye, Pentecost, Thomas Ice, on and on and on it goes. Each of these men stated, taught, or teach that the prophetic countdown ended at the cross, and that as a result of Israel's rejection of the kingdom. To cite Thomas Ice again, in the book, Last Days Controversy, Last Days Controversy, due to the Jewish rejection of the kingdom, it made it, quote, impossible, unquote, for Jesus to fulfill his mission to establish the kingdom. The kingdom offer was withdrawn, once again, and the church was established in its place. We're waiting for the rapture of the church so that God can once again resume his dealings with Israel in this final 7-year countdown of Daniel chapter 9. Now let's be very plain, let's be very clear. God sent Jesus, quote, at just the right time, unquote. Galatians chapter 4, verse 4. In the fullness of time there is the pleroma, which means the divinely appointed time. Kairos, divinely appointed time. So that means that God the Father sent his Son at just the right time. The right time to do what? To establish the kingdom through a process of his last day's work. So, here's what we have. God looked down through the stream of time, picked the very first century as just the right time to fulfill Daniel chapter 9. By the way, when Jesus said, the time is fulfilled, once again, Greek word kairos, the divinely appointed time, that means that the prophetic countdown was about to reach its climax. That's why it had drawn near. And so, that tells us that God in his omniscience, God in his knowledge, knew what time it was. He sent his Son, who said the time had drawn near. And yet, the Jews evidently caught God and Jesus off guard, rejected the kingdom, forcing the establishment of the church and the postponement of the kingdom. Folks, any way you want to slice it or dice it, that is a failure on God's part. I said this to Thomas Ice to his face some years ago in Florida as we were having a formal public debate. I said, your doctrine is a doctrine of failure. It says God failed and Jesus failed and John the Baptizer failed, and he was adamant. It is not a doctrine of failure. And my response is this. If I give you, or someone gives me a task, my wife says, hey babe, go down to the store, get a loaf of bread, dozen eggs, and a gallon of milk. I run down to the store. And I come back with a bag of chips. And my wife says, where are the eggs? Where's the milk? Where's the bread? Or whatever else it was. And I say, well, I didn't get them, but I got this. I got a bag of chips. I didn't send you after a bag of chips. That's not failure to do what I was sent to do. I want to urge, ask, and implore my dispensational friends to listen very carefully. To suggest that God sent Jesus on a task and he failed to do what the Father gave him to do can mean nothing except God failed. He failed to see that it really wasn't the right time. Jesus failed. I have come to do the will of my Father who sent me. Now, I want you to consider the following. In Psalms chapter 2, verse 6 and following, the Lord said, why do the heathen rage? Why do the nations or the kings of the earth imagine a vain thing? Why do they set themselves in array against God and against his anointed? Yet he who sits in the heavens will laugh. He will hold them in derision, saying, yet have I set my king on my holy hill Zion. Do you catch the power of that? Here in Psalms 2 is a prediction of the rejection of Jesus. Folks, if the Old Testament predicted the the rejection of Jesus, then guess what? The rejection of Jesus didn't catch God off guard. It didn't make God say, oh my goodness, they rejected the kingdom. What am I going to do? Oh, I know, I'll establish the church. No, God predicted the rejection of his Son. It was his plan. The rejection of Jesus was not unforeseen. It was planned. Why? Because through the rejection of Jesus, Jesus shed his blood to purchase the church. The church was not the mystery unknown in the Old Testament. So, here we have in Psalms chapter 2, the prediction of the rejection of Jesus. Oh, by the way, Daniel chapter 9, verse 26, and after the 62 weeks, which is technically after the 69th week, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. Now look, folks, if you have a countdown of 70 weeks, and the 70 weeks are determined to bring in the kingdom, and the countdown says after the 69th week, Messiah will be cut off, then that means the death of the Messiah is right there in the 70-year prophecy. Predicted in the 70-year prophecy. There is no gap between the 69th week and the 70th week. It is after the 69th week, Messiah is cut off, and then what follows? The destruction of the temple and the city. That's after the 69th week. Where does that put it? In the 70th week. But here's the point. Not only does Psalms 2, not only does Daniel chapter 9 predict the rejection of Jesus, remember, God said, yet, well, first of all, he said, the one who sits in the heavens shall laugh. God would laugh at their rejection. God would laugh at their attempt to thwart his Son's mission. and say, yet, which means, you know, guys, in spite of the worst you've done, in spite of your rejection, in spite of your attempts to thwart my purpose and the purpose of my Son, I've set my King on my holy hill Zion. That means he was enthroned on the throne of David. Kingdom. God laughed at man's attempts to thwart his purpose. No postponement, no failure, no delay. Listen, let me really urge you, as I've suggested, get a copy of my book, Seal Up Vision and Prophecy. In this book, I discuss Psalms 2 and the incredible power of this passage in disproving the dispensational failure doctrine. Once again, you can say it's not failure all you want. But if God sent his Son to do something, and if his Son came to do something, and he did not do what the Father sent him to do, and if he could not do what he came to do, then he failed. Go to my website, get the book, Seal Up Vision and Prophecy. Make mention that you saw the offer on YouTube or Facebook, and I will give you a copy free of charge of my book, Can God Tell Time? Okay, we have more on the question, did Jesus fail? Did God postpone the kingdom, as our dispensational friends say? You're going to be blown away with what the Old Testament explicitly says about Jesus and his mission. I'll see you on the flip side.